with one Roman Catholic to a majority of Roman Catholics, a 6-member majority of Roman Catholics. And as of now, no Protestants, because the court session just ended and Powell has retired. And the new one will be a Jew. So there's 3 Jews on the on the court and 6 Roman Catholics. Elena Kagan is a Jew. In any case, it's interesting because theoretically you have Sabbath keepers and Sunday keepers on the Supreme Court. You only have 2 now. It's the Roman Catholics and the Jewish. But I don't know whether the Jews are religious Jews and actually keep the Sabbath or not. Probably not. But I don't know that for certain. I haven't done that particular research. The point is, Rome is stealthily, as the Great Controversy says, and steadily gaining power and influence in the legislative halls of the United States. And I want to demonstrate that for you this afternoon by showing you something that I think you will find fascinating. Those of you who have been living in the United States, which is basically all of us, will remember the health care fight that took place in Congress over President Obama's and the Democratic Party's agenda to reform health care in the United States and basically make it socialized. That's what their goal was, and they have largely succeeded. And it's, once a legislation like that is made, it's very difficult for it to return and go back to what it was before. So don't expect that it's going to change back. But I want to show you something about the health care reform bill that most Americans have no idea about, although it was in the press. Now, since 1989, well, really since the beginning of the pontificate of John Paul II, 1978, there has been a dramatic, and though gradual, but very steady increase in Rome's popularity in the United States. Rome has become enormously popular here in this country. Americans are awed by Rome. And this gives Rome tremendous influence and power. Now Rome has expanded her political efforts. Hang on, let me just back up a second. You see, back in 1989, you remember the Berlin Wall and how it all came apart, and Eastern European communism was essentially dismantled. Do you remember that? Okay. How did that happen? John Paul and Ronald Reagan got together and had a conspiracy against Eastern European communism. Dramatic changes. They were prophetic, but little did I realize what was happening with regard to that. And just as an aside, which isn't really part of this message this afternoon, but you're going to hear more about this in future sermons from Keep the Faith, Germany is rising to great power in Europe. In fact, Germany is going to dictate how Europe develops geopolitically from here on out. And she owes her allegiance to none other than John Paul and Ronald Reagan. Without what they did in 1989, Germany would not have become reunited. In fact, that's one of the reasons that they did what they did, is so that Germany could reunite. For it is a historical fact that when Germany is united, she rises to power both politically and also militarily. When she is divided, she is weak. And they knew that. And so Ronald Reagan and John Paul got together, orchestrated the dismantling of communism, and the end result is that Germany is reunited today, and Germany has been steadily rising to power. When you hear our sermon on the Greeks And the debt crisis in Greece, you're going to hear more about Germany and how Germany is basically controlling the process of resolution of the Greek crisis. Why is that important prophetically? Well, because Rome is behind Germany. Germany owes her allegiance to Rome because without Rome, she would not have had the ability to rise to power. So she will not fight Rome. She will actually work hand in glove with Rome. Angela Merkel, a Lutheran or daughter of a Lutheran pastor, for that matter, amazingly, is actually trying to build Rome's power in Europe. She's working for the reestablishment of the Holy Roman Empire, along with other leaders of Europe, of course. But that said, you can be watching that in the future. But what I want to say now is that ever since 1989, there has been an increasing integration of the bishops into American political activity. And I want you to notice what happened. In 1989 and before, the United States entered into cooperation with Rome on geopolitical goals, mutual geopolitical goals outside of the United States. But a change has happened now. Because of that, they became used to each other, and because of the ecumenical movement, the Protestants are no longer afraid of the Roman Catholics from a prophetic point of view or a biblical point of view. And so now, because of those two elements, working together out there in global issues with the United States, now they are working together on domestic issues in the United States. Do you understand the difference? You see, a president has two objectives. He's got foreign policy and domestic policy to work on. And some presidents are criticized because they're weak in one area or the other. Well, Rome is working both sides now. Now that the United States is no longer fearful of Rome's involvement in politics, Rome can move into domestic issues and work with the United States, or perhaps I should put it more bluntly, manipulate the United States. And that's exactly what happened in the healthcare issue. But let's go back in history for just a little bit. As we mentioned, Daniel 7:25 says that the Holy See speaks great words against the Most High and shall wear out the saints of the Most High and think to change times and laws. Now, if ever any organization was great in changing God's law, it is the Catholic Church. If ever any organization wore out the saints of the Most High, it is, by persecuting them, it is the papacy, even while creating so many so-called saints of her own. The Bible even speaks of the Vatican city-state in Revelation 18. Revelation 18, if you will. Revelation 18, verse 18 and 19. The Bible speaks of the Vatican city-state. What city is like unto this great city? It says there in verse 18. All right? In other words, speaking of the great whore, it says, and the woman which thou sawest is that great city. That's Revelation 17. Which reigneth over the kings of the earth. The Vatican is indeed great. Perhaps I should mention that Cardinal Bertone, the Vatican Secretary of State, recently said that the Vatican is great in every way, or in many ways. The greatest in all the world, he said. And he was talking about how at the funeral of John Paul II, so many world leaders came to kneel before him, the dead man, at the funeral there. He was referring to that. He said, in a special way, let me see, I have it here. According to Bertone, okay, the Holy See is small but great, he said, the greatest in the world from any point of view. Now, the Bible calls the Vatican City and the papacy as great also, doesn't it? But perhaps Bertone wasn't thinking about what the Bible says, but he was actually confirming what the Bible says prophetically when he said what he said. But just he meant it in a different way. But today I want to show you a direct fulfillment of the prophecy